I'm here with Sunil Shanbag, the director of the Gujarati production of All's Well That Ends Well, that was first performed at the Globe to Globe Theatre in 2012. We're now in 2014, and he's come back for a second season with the troupe to perform 6 performances of this production, which has been translated into Gujarati. And what I'd really like to ask you, Sunil, is when you start to work with Shakespeare, what is your first priority?
Well, on this particular production, it was we were very aware that we were doing it for a Shakespeare festival, right? I mean that was that it wasn't being done as let's do a Shakespearean play. It wasn't being done that way. There was a context in which it was going to be performed, so we were very aware of that. But because of that, when Tom Bird, the festival director, met me first in Bombay, I just made one condition. I said I'd be very happy to do a play for the festival, but we are going to make it our own. And if you're okay with that, then we are okay with doing this. And that's really very important for us. At that point of time, it was instinctive. I had no clue which play I would be doing, what style I would be doing, how I would adapt it, work on it. I had no clue. But instinctively, I knew that the only way it would work for me as an artistic challenge and honest production is if we were allowed to completely make it our own. I don't think when I said that I even completely understood the implications of that, but it was just a gut feeling. And you know, the Globe's been wonderful about these things. They said absolutely. I mean, we wouldn't expect anything else, and so that was where it, started. There was some back and forth about which play to do. I was very keen on doing Taming of the Shrew because of the problems with that play. I was very interested in getting my teeth into that, the woman character and the guy, and how do we resolve something like this. But that was already taken. So they said, they suggested, will you do All's Well That Ends Well? And I had read the play many years ago and wasn't very familiar with it. But when I did read it, I thought it would make for a very interesting adaptation. And that's what we did. So the intent was to produce a Shakespearean play, keeping alive and being very true to the spirit of the original play, being very true to the spirit of Shakespeare. And when I say spirit of Shakespeare, I mean, how does one retain the lyrical quality, which is so, profound in his work, the Shakespearean spirit, things like the philosophical reflections that are so much part of a Shakespearean text, the drama, and yet make it something that would work completely with Indian audiences. I was very clear in my head that the play had to have a life before and after the Globe Festival. It was not something that I'm going to be producing which would be showcased in a kind of a sterile, very clearly defined context and then out. No. It doesn't make sense for me to spend 2 months of my time working on a production and not running it for at least a year. So which meant that it had to work with Gujarati audiences in India. That was the only way the play. And Gujarati audiences are very clear. It's very clear what they like, what they don't like. So that was really the challenge. Two very opposing contexts, Globe festival context and Gujarati mainstream theatre context. So these were the many thoughts that were going through our minds when we started working on this play.
Right, so when you started to translate it, how does that work? When you actually have the text in front of you and you know you want to stay true to the lyricism, what are the kinds of ways in which you might go about making those words speak and sing in another language?
I think we were very clear that we were not going to just translate it. We were going to adapt it. Okay, so which takes it much beyond translation. I think it was very important to find the right setting for the play, for the adaptation. And when I read the original, it struck me immediately that perhaps shifting the play from the royal courts of Europe, France in particular, into 19th century India, okay, and Mumbai specifically, the trade, the business, the growing port city, seemed the right way to place it. So I got a journey from a small village in Saurashtra, a kind of a movement from there into the big city, and then from there into a trading outpost in Burma. which kind of, is parallel to the journey in the original, which is provincial France to Paris to the court of the king and then on to Florence. It was very important that the Gujarati audience felt it was their play and not a Shakespearean play that they were watching in their language. And so this adaptation allowed me actually to place the history of a large part of the Gujarati community in front of them. Say, but this is it. This is and a lot of people remember this journey, and they've not lived through it, but they have grandparents, they have uncles, aunts, all who have done this kind of journey from small town Gujarat into the city and then out into the world. So it was very interesting because what we did really was just place the history in front of them, and that made them completely connect with what was going on. And so that the vehicle became very strong. Once you have the vehicle, then adding in the story and the love element, that's not difficult because the original play is quite well written in that sense. The plot is very clear.
Do you think that there would have been some kind of resistance to having Shakespeare done for this Gujarati audience? Is there something about an imperial culture, an imperial centre that sort of remains? Or
No. I don't think there's any politics involved in that. It's just that when Shakespeare is seen as high art, okay, so right, because that's how we were sold Shakespeare in school. We were told that it's the high point of British civilization. It's Shakespeare, right? That's how we were sold Shakespeare, and most of our experiences with Shakespeare in school have not been very happy experiences. They're difficult texts to understand. Something that was forced on us the same way as learning the British Constitution was forced on us. I studied the British Constitution in school, for heaven's sake. Why did I study the British Constitution? But I did, right? So our associations with Shakespeare are, it's arty, it's intellectual, it's difficult to understand, it's meant for those who are very well read, And so in a popular theatre form, in a context, it's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to tell a Gujarati, you're going to watch a Shakespeare and say, I don't care. So that was more important to me. So it was not really the politics of it at all. I've been quite overwhelmed by the response from British critics and academics. It's very interesting that they've read a lot more than I expected into the play. Some of them have, in fact, given me interesting insights into what we've done subconsciously without really thinking about it, which I think is what critics should do, in fact, that, if they can throw back insights at the people making the play and tell them, look, this is an interesting idea that's coming through and we don't even realize that. So that has happened. I was very concerned because it's known as one of Shakespeare's problem plays, which is why very few people here do it. And when they do it, it's quite awkward the way they do it from what I've read. We didn't look at it like that. We just made sure that there was no insistence on logic, because this plot has no logic. Why does a beautiful young girl fall in love with not such a nice guy? God, I see this all the time, right? So where's the logic in that? But the minute you start trying to find logic, it's going to collapse, right? I think when we threw logic out of the window in our typical Indian celebratory way, people here suddenly said, oh my God, there is no problem in this play. It seems to make perfect sense. And to be honest, they've been gracious enough to accept it in a very positive way. They haven't, felt in any way, they haven't been patronizing at all. In fact, there's been a lot of interest in the way we adapted it. Yeah.
But there's also been some kind of very standard, this is like Bollywood and this is a sort of Bollywood-esque production, and those are the quotes that still go on the promotional material, and that must rile a little bit because your work is so not Bollywood.
Well, it's ironical. The kind of theatre that I do and many of my friends do, our biggest battle is in fact with Bollywood. Not because we don't like Bollywood, we all enjoy going and seeing a Bollywood film, but the cultural space in India is dominated with Bollywood, and there's a huge squeeze on space for our kind of work. Okay, but I also understand where this is coming from. The West has seen song and dance only represented through Bollywood. Very few people in the West don't really know where it came to from in Bollywood itself. Where did the song and dance come to? It came from our folk forms. We've always had music as part of our storytelling. And if you look at the history of Indian cinema just replaced the act on stage in the same traveling tents, the folk forms were replaced by a projector and a screen. And very quickly they realized that the audience wanted more of that. So cinema just became a new form, and it just went back to the same modes of storytelling. So, but people don't think. They song and dance, it must be Bollywood, right? I take a little bit of I guess positive thing out of it when they say it's the best kind of Bollywood, which means that somewhere I think the way we've presented the song and dance is closer to how it was actually intended, and that the way it is, in fact, it's non-manipulative, it has some integration with the story, there is a cultural connect, etc. So yeah. But yeah, it's ironical. But I don't care, it's alright. It's alright.
I would like to ask you, you mentioned how Shakespeare is still seen as high art. How did you deal with that? I mean, you did mention that, but how did you deal with removing that stigma of high art from Shakespeare was your audience at all affected by the fact that it was Shakespeare?
No. All our advertising for this play has always mentioned that it's an adaptation of a Shakespearean play, All's Well That Ends Well. It's always mentioned that. So we have never pretended that it's not. But we have not gone overboard talking about it, making it this unique selling point of this play at all. I think at the same time we never shied away from bringing in a certain sophistication of language and thought. All right, when Mihir Bhuta, the translator, and so the adaptation that he did, I told Mihir very clearly, we are not going to ever dumb down this play, right? The plot is simple enough. It's really very simple. It doesn't need anything. In fact, some of it is quite silly. It's so simple. So how do we make it a richer experience? And that's where the poetry, the metaphors, the similes, the philosophical, reflections that are there in the original, some of which we have even added on, gives it a richness of texture. Okay, and I think that was how it was intended even in the original, that you have a very simple plot, but you flood it with so many other layers that it becomes an experience beyond just. So the plot is just something that just for the audience to hold on to, but you actually enjoy so many other things. So it was interesting that the gatekeepers of Gujarati mainstream theatre took one look at what we were doing and said 5 performances, no more. So Sunil Bhai will go to London, he will do those 2 shows, and then he'll come back and he'll do 5 or 6 more, and the play will shut down, because who is interested in seeing a play like this? Our plays are more plays like titles like Rupyani Rani and a Dollar Yo Raja. Okay, the queen of the Rupee queen and the dollar king, about a young man who leaves village and goes to America, makes it big, forgets all his Indian values, and the girl he was supposed to marry, This is what they used to see. And I said, nahi, I don't think we should go by that. I don't think we should really, that's really being very, very patronizing to an audience. And yes, the Gujarati theatre audience is very, very naive, very innocent even, because that's the kind of stuff they've been seeing. But we ran it, and we ran it for a year and a half. We did over 50 performances all over Gujarat. And say out of 100 people, I know that 45 to 50 people even today are keen on an entertainment that they take something back with them. And really in the game of numbers, 45 to 50% is more than enough for someone like for us. We are not looking for mass markets, etc., because that's not what we do. So in that sense, we felt very, very vindicated by our position. We said, no, that was right. What we did was right. And it did create quite a stir in the Gujarati theatre in Bombay for 2 years. People were talking about it and saying, why can't there be more plays like this? Why can't we have a choice in what we get to see? So it did what it had to do. I wish 2 or 3 more productions had come up around us. Then we would have been a bigger force to reckon with, but that didn't happen.
What were the kind of reactions in India in the critical domain to some of those themes?
Well, as I said, for a lot of older people, it was like a replaying of their history. I think we were able to bring a certain kind of contemporary feel to it because really even today the essential questions aren't very different. I mean, earlier the question was a young man leaving a village in Saurashtra and coming to Bombay, and the anxiety about how would he or she maintain the value systems, because there is a certain status quo involved in this. So you would like to perpetuate a certain system of values. Today it's the same young people traveling abroad. So the anxieties are the same about what do you do, how do you retain control, how do you keep a certain cultural integrity going, etc., etc. So I think people recognize that greatly. Secondly, what we did with the two women characters, I think, has had an impact. In the original text, Helena is in a kind of a grey zone. She's almost a stalker. She's extremely manipulative in parts, and so you really wonder about her. You also see that Shakespeare uses the other woman, Diana, who's the woman that Bertram, falls in love with when he's away in Florence, in our case in Rangoon. She's really just a theatrical device. She's so completely one-dimensional. But the minute we changed that emphasis and we made Haley a much more powerful, woman who seemed to know her mind, and I've seen enough examples of this that the woman generally recognizes that there's something in this relationship and the man does not know it till much later, and she just goes for it and goes through a lot of shit till the guy recognizes it. So I've seen this happening all the time in life. So we use that as a way of doing this, and we made Alkini, the woman Diana, a much more powerful character. Her dilemma is very real, and I think somewhere that sisterhood between these two women, who find themselves a very interesting dilemma, made a big impact on the audience. That here is a strong young woman who's also free, to do what she wants to do, and yet quite trapped by her own emotions. And interestingly enough, in the average Gujarati household, it is the woman who chooses which play the family will see. So having a strong woman character also helped tremendously. You know what I'm saying? They come to the show, they see it and they say, yeah, it was good that we saw this play. So it worked both ways, yeah.
When Indian theatre makers come to the UK, how can they get out of this kind of Bollywood taint and this bind? Because it's kind of derogatory in a way. I understand what you're saying, that this Bollywood thing is the filter through which English critics and English people understand, or English-speaking people understand India, but there's so much more to it.
I think it's more than just Bollywood, frankly, Preeti. It's much more than that. I think Indian theatre makers a particular kind of Indian theatre maker have far more fundamental problems. This is really not the kind of theatre that I do normally, alright? Maru Piyo Gayo Rangoon does not really represent my body of work. To a certain extent it does, in the sense that the way we have adapted is typically the way I would think with any text, right? I would always try and find a very strong social context within which to work, etc., etc. And I think that approach helped this production tremendously in terms of giving it a very strong core. But the kind of stuff I do is usually very, very culturally specific, very rooted in a social context in India, looking at very, very strong issues that affect us there. So I have a play called Sex, Morality and Censorship, which looks at the whole idea of censorship and morality, and it's a big problem that affects Indian artists, whether they are painters or theatre people or writers. Okay, the moral police, the informal moral policing that we are subject to, etc., etc. Very hard for a play like that to travel abroad. Language, because I only work in Indian languages mostly. Okay, I do the odd English play, but mostly in Indian languages. And for my play to really be layered and nuanced, it has to be very, very specific. And today the trend is for a kind of a wimpy global theatre without language, with some sense of universality, body, physical stuff. which does not really, and even if it is culturally rooted, it's exotica. Okay, so in that context, in fact, I don't even care about Bollywood, frankly. I have far bigger problems to worry about. But because we have such a strong home audience, I don't really miss it. But I do know that it's getting more and more difficult for contemporary Indian theatre to travel. I've had friends who've gone to festivals abroad and shown their work, and people have said, where did this come from? We don't know this kind of theatre exists in India.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting.
But it's almost as if they don't want to know that kind of India exists in India.
Possibly. I use this word global theatre. I use it with, in a slightly flip way. But believe me, it's a very dangerous phenomenon. I've seen so many young, very, very good Indian writers, directors who are being pushed into this mode of production, which is not really their style at all. But that's the only way they can go to a residency in South Korea, they can go to a residency in Japan, they can go to the US. If they do this kind of strange theatre that does not belong really to anyone, a kind of an artificial world really, of seminars, of, theatre festivals, of residencies. It just belongs there. I don't think real audiences ever see this work.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of political position that you take by only performing works in Indian languages, that's really striking, especially when the language politics is such a big issue there.
Yeah, well, I work in 4 languages, okay, and that reflects the language diversity of the region in which I work. I work in Gujarati, I work in Marathi, I work in Hindi and in English. And I'm very acutely aware of the natural language of a play. Every play has a natural language, and you have to be aware of it. You may choose not to use it for other reasons, but you have to be very aware of it. Sex, morality and censorship, their natural language is Marathi. But I knew that if I did that play in Marathi, I wouldn't do more than 30 to 40 performances, and I'd be restricted to a geographical region of Maharashtra. I want my plays to travel across India, so then Hindi becomes the language. But when I do the translation, I'm very careful to use syntax and structures of Marathi in Hindi. So a lot of people come back 2 years later and say, oh, when have you done a Hindi version? Because I saw the Marathi version. And I said, there was never a Marathi version. I said, no, I'm sure I saw Marathi. So it's interesting that we have managed to make Hindi remain in your subconscious like you saw it in Marathi. And you understood every word of it. So I think these are very important things for anybody working in India today. Very, very important.
Yeah, I don't even know how you say sex, morality and censorship in Hindi.
No, I use the English title.
Did you have anyone in India objecting to Gujarati as a language as a vehicle for Shakespeare?
Objecting to Gujarati? Not at all.
Like when Sapal went to India, he mentioned that certain sections of the Indian society weren't very happy with Shakespeare in another language. Did you face anything like that at all with the language?
He probably refers to a very, very small elite that probably studied his Shakespeare in English, owes cultural allegiance to the old idea of, England. Yeah, probably out of sync even with what is happening in Britain today. I've had a young friend, not now, but 20, 25 years ago, he came here to study law. He comes from a very, very upper class Parsi family. And they, as a family, would gather around and listen to the BBC. And there was a piano, and they'd play piano, and someone would read a story from Dickens. This is the world he came from in Bombay. And he comes to modern London thinking that that's what he's going to. And he had a huge reverse cultural shock. He almost had a nervous breakdown because he couldn't deal with modern Britain. You see, so we have people who live in a time warp.
What did you make of the Globe to Globe Festival's restriction on not using English in the plays?
I don't know where that came from. I was also quite amused when I, read about that, and of course the way the translation and the adaptation finally worked out, it was a non-issue. But I think if I'm being generous and charitable, I think they just wanted to make sure that there was a language diversity, and English in some way didn't sneak its way in. But yeah, I guess they could have put it a slightly different way. Yeah.
If you weren't being generous and charitable, what would you say?
If I wasn't being generous, I would think as an artist, I would be a little offended by being told, don't do this and do that and do that. Yeah, I'd be a little offended by that. Yeah. I think. Well, they've demonstrated tremendous faith in inviting people, many of whom they really don't know very well. They've demonstrated tremendous faith and confidence. I think they could have just extended that further. Yeah, I think we're all thinking people, and we would have done it right.
Right, and also for countries where there is a history of colonialism, it's a little silly to ban English.
Yeah, because I mean, if I were to do a contemporary adaptation, for instance, I couldn't not use English. I would use English, right? Because English is so much part of our language canvas in India, especially in the cities. So it would be silly. So that's what I mean when I said that it wasn't a very well thought through condition that they laid down. It's interesting that people of my generation who studied in English, we all studied Shakespeare in school. That's getting less and less so now. The new curriculums. Yeah, the new curriculums of Shakespeare is out now, that kind of thing is gone. But still, you don't see Shakespeare represented in the theatre as much as you'd think he would be. Given that we all studied Shakespeare, I think it was the manner in which we were made to study Shakespeare. I think
Still that higher.
forced to learn something that didn't quite make sense. And imagine sitting and learning Macbeth. I mean, it's an alien geography, it's an alien culture completely, or Hamlet or Macbeth. And the only reason we did it was just because it was presented as something that was meant to be exciting. And I think it's only much later that you really begin to understand the value of what you've read, when you were a student. So yeah, so I'm interested in knowing, your work on acknowledged and not acknowledged use of Shakespeare in cinema, because frankly, if it finds its way into popular art, then that's something quite significant.